Live from Memorial Hall in Cincinnati, Ohio, it's the 66th Annual Scripps Howard Awards pre-show. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Memorial Hall here in Cincinnati. We are just a few minutes away from a huge celebration of journalism and its impact in our communities with the Scripps Howard Awards show.
It's always a great night. You know what? The celebration, Craig, has already started here as winners and of the awards, that is, and other guests are already out here gathering and mingling, making a lot of noise, so we're going to be as loud as we possibly can.
A lot of noise behind us, so much excitement building. We're actually going to bring some of this excitement to you here in the next 25 minutes or so through interviews with a number of people who are already here, and I think we have one special guest on stage right now.
We sure do. Liz, thank you so much for being with us. This is your big night, the Scripps Foundation's biggest night, so tell us all about why these awards matter.
Well, this is actually a big night for the journalists and for journalism, and they really matter because journalism that's the way that we tell our stories and that we learn about the world we live in and are given the information so that we can make great decisions. And these journalists tonight uncovered injustices. They were a voice for people who had no voice. They brought understanding, and it's wonderful. It's such a difficult career, and it's such a wonderful thing to be able to honor them in their work tonight.
66 years for these awards, is that right? Do I have that correct?
You have that correct, yes.
Okay. And
yes.
66 years, and every year these awards seem to get more intriguing and the award show better and better.
You know what, the show is absolutely wonderful, but the work especially, all the new tools that journalists have to use, the stories are beautiful, beautifully told, beautifully written, beautiful video, and so meaningful. So I really encourage all viewers, check out those stories. Check them out.
I know every time I come to the Scripps Howard Awards, I always come away so inspired to do more, to do better.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's not just doing well in the way of journalism, it's as an individual, as a person, as a citizen of this country to do more, to stand up and to, reach for what we know we can be.
I think it's such a broad range of topics that are highlighted here tonight as well around the world. It's a global award show, really.
It is. I mean, this is about journalism that's from media companies in the United States. So we have people in from every corner of this country, but their stories reach way beyond the United States. We live in a global world.
Yeah.
And it's clear from the faces on everyone that is walking through these doors, this is a fun night too.
Oh my gosh, you can feel the excitement, you can hear all the people talking, and it's wonderful. It's such a difficult time to be a journalist, and you're questioned on so many fronts, but this is an essential part of our democracy, and it's so lovely to be able to recognize that and support these journalists tonight.
Well, Liz Carter with the Scripps Howard Foundation, thank you so much for spending a little time here with us tonight.
Thank you all for the work you do.
We love it. We sure do. And we want to bring up now, of course, our CEO, Adam. Adam, thank you so much for being with us.
Good evening.
This is such a gigantic night for everyone. But specifically, as the CEO of Scripps, Media Scripps Company, talk to me about what it means to you.
This is probably one of the best celebrations of journalism, I think, in the nation. And this is a company that's for 140 years been committed to journalism, committed to objective quality enterprise journalism, as you both know. And so to be able to bring together the most talented journalists who produce the best content of the last year, I think is just an incredible honor for the company to be a sponsor.
Well, what do you think it means that Scripps isn't just highlighting Scripps journalists, that you are highlighting journalists from a huge genre,
Sure.
From newspapers to TV to even podcasts, who are making a difference, and you're not just keeping it within the Scripps wheelhouse?
Well, I think there are moments where you put down your competitive instinct and you're able to actually celebrate your peers and the work that's being done from the journalism perspective, the entire body. Right now, this is a difficult moment for journalism in many ways. I think objectivity is sometimes being challenged. Certainly the lines of objectivity are blurred, and so as a company, we've always been very dedicated to quality, objective journalism. That's never changed. And so when we see that out in the marketplace, even if it's being done by peers of ours, folks that we compete with normally, we're more than happy to be able to celebrate their accomplishments in this quality journalism.
And doesn't it help us, because then we continue to raise our bar too. We look at it as a company and say, hey, That was fantastic. We can learn from these people.
Absolutely. We'd love nothing more than for our journalists to be in the hunt and in the competition for these awards. And there have been certainly years where we have won Scripps Howard Journalism Awards, Investigative Reporters and Editors Awards, Murrow's, Walter Cronkite Journalism Awards, Peabody's and DuPont's. I think one of the things that's so important is the recognition you get by your peers when you're putting work out there for the whole world to see. You know, it's important to recognize that American journalism is strong, it's in good shape, and I think the E.W. Scripps Company is committed to that journalism, whether it's being done by our journalists or folks outside of our company.
I hope I'm getting this right. As I recall it, you were head of an investigative unit for, I think, KABC, right? Or
I worked in investigative reporting for about 15 years inside of newsrooms, and so that's really particularly why this is so important to me.
That's what I was going to ask you. Does that really strike a chord then?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, this is the night of the year in which I am able to stand next to the folks who I emulate, who I wanted to be just like. I mean, the quality of work they're doing is incredible, and this is the kind of work I wanted to do when I was an investigative journalist, and so I'm just incredibly proud to be here tonight.
You're doing fine, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I guess to finally sum it up, and I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Yes.
Have you gotten to watch any of the entries that won, and is there one that you want to talk about specifically?
I've watched almost all of them, or read almost all of them. I think the work that was done in the audio category was terrific. I thought the work that was done by the photojournalist from the Los Angeles Times, visual storytelling, incredible and very impactful. The editorial writing winner, bringing empathy to topics in his body of work. So I just think we're incredibly lucky to have these folks here in Cincinnati tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be an incredible show, of course. We need to let you go, though, because
Adam
I know you have to
Simpson,
go get into your
thank you
place.
so much.
Thank you very much.
Great to see you as
Tanya,
always.
very
Great
cool.
to see you.
All right, well, tonight's show is being live streamed, and it will be available for replay on YouTube, Facebook, and, of course, on the website shawards.org.
And I am so thrilled that right now we are here with the host of tonight's big award show, Michelle Miller of CBS News, of course. Michelle, thanks so much for, number one, being here and stopping by with us tonight. What does it mean as a journalist to be part of the Scripps Howard Awards?
I tell you, Scripps Howard has meant something to me because I've been on the board of Hampton University's Scripps Howard School of Journalism. I understand what you do. I understand what this great organization means. And it's really about showcasing journalists in their hard work to showcase the hard work of other people seeking the truth. First and foremost, you well know, our profession is a tough one. It is a profession. Not just anyone can do it. And, you know, we have ethics. There is no such thing as fake news as far as I'm concerned. It is news. Right. And it's important for people to know that and to be aware of that. And we work really hard. And we're truth seekers. And we are seeking the truth to benefit the people who live not only in this country, but the rest of the world.
We heard Adam Simpson just say that the state of journalism is strong in our country. It's being challenged for sure, but it is strong. And you see it on a national level, we see it on a local level, and on a national level it is more criticized. So do you believe that we are at a time of kind of a golden age of journalism?
Well, I tell you, there have been many golden ages of journalism. Just rewind to the Nixon era, and you look at what took place in the 70s, and you look, 50 years before that with McCarthy and what was taking place then. It's interesting because, the golden age revolves around politics, but generally speaking, you've had so many other movements that have taken place in this country, whether it's the women's movement, the civil rights movement, and we can go on and on and on. Journalism is in the First Amendment of the Constitution. And I dare say the Founding Fathers understood that we are the guards and the guardians of democracy.
Well, we're going to see some amazing journalism tonight, and some of the pieces tonight, some of the articles, took months and months and months of hard work to even accomplish what we get to see tonight.
Two things that I really do appreciate with this award. You see so much partnership in what we do. It's not like your competitor. I mean, people and institutions came together to go after a story.
Right.
And whether it was looking at medical implants, or whether it was showcasing the fact that you have children who are seeking to be who they feel they truly are.
Right.
You go on and on and on. The types of stories that we are lauding, they do good things, and they make people aware of the conditions of people.
Michelle Miller, you are wonderful. It's so lovely to have met you. We know you got to get up there and get ready.
Get
We're
into
going to
it,
ring the
please.
bells any minute for people to get together. So thank you so much, and we'll see you on stage in just a little bit, and we'll see you on the weekends too.
Awesome. CBS This Morning.
That's right. We'll be tuning in.
All right, so Michelle's on her way now to go get prepared for the show. Again, it's going to be pretty spectacular, but you know what? The guests keep coming.
They sure do. We have with us Mike Scagliotti and Jake Howard Potter. Gentlemen, I have to ask, which is which? Who's Jake? Who's Mike?
I'm Mike.
Hi, Mike. Tanya.
Hi, Tanya.
This is Craig.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Craig.
Jake.
Jake.
Nice to meet you
Thank
guys.
you so much for being here.
Thank you for being here.
These are family members, and Scripps Howard family members they take their jobs as very seriously. Please explain to folks why that is, that the family is such a strong supporter of these awards.
We are strong supporters of these awards because our family has been intimately involved with promulgating journalism as one of the most important pillars of a free society. And I think we do it because we know that we have to work to keep that privilege alive. It's not something that's given to us for free.
It's an honor for me to be here to support, the legacy that my great-grandfather and grandfather created and left. Supporting journalists and supporting journalism in its absolutely best form is really, I think, how we keep a free democracy and how we hold the powerful accountable, and that's, an important and primary function of journalism.
Let's be honest. A lot of family members of large corporations like the E.W. Scripps Company could just sort of sit back and not really get too affected, too involved, yet you all do. And I mean, we've seen you at WCPO. Some family members will come in all the time, in fact, and visit with us, and we'll go out and shoot stories to understand what our process and what we do. It really is a hats off to you all for really having a real true interest in what it is we're doing as journalists. So I thank you.
Absolutely. Well, Cincinnati for the Scripps family is the mothership, so we come back here a lot for many reasons, including to see each other, but also to see the company and interact with the company. And in doing so, we're able to reflect on the fact that, we all live in communities. I'm from San Francisco. I have cousins from Texas, from New England, from Florida, from California, all over the place.
See the shining sea.
So I think what we do, what the E.W. Scripps Company does, and what the journalists we're honoring tonight do, is they basically bring the importance of community to each person who is reading that story or watching that story, and allows us to create this circuit in our brains of like, wow, where I'm standing, wherever it is in the world, it really matters because there's some crazy business going on. And the journalists, like you said, are holding the powerful accountable. And it allows us to think about how a very small local community is part of a big global picture.
So is it one of those things over at the dinner table when you're a small child, they say you have to be involved? This is an absolute birthright?
Yeah, I honestly think there's something in the genes. I mean, I really think there is some genetic component or some, family interest in the business of, sort of gathering information and, disseminating stories and sort of doing the right thing. So, my brothers and I, we're all, news hounds. We read lots of newspapers, and, even my younger brothers still get newspapers every day, which all their friends think is crazy. So, I think it's genetic, but it's also a way to link back to our past and, honor the legacy of our forefathers and, really kind of continue to carry, the family tradition.
Well, again,
we've been together. We've been hanging out today since breakfast, and I have heard umpteen stories, and they're all like these incredibly detailed stories about everything under the sun. So you're a knowledge hound. It is indeed in the genes.
We like you guys. We like knowledge hounds.
well, thank you both for being here and spending some time with us. And thank you again for the dedication within the Scripps family to journalism overall.
It's our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Enjoy the show tonight,
Thank you.
guys.
Cheers.
Enjoy
Thanks.
all the awards. It's
Thanks
such a
very
pleasure
much.
to
Thank
meet
you.
both of you. Take care.
Thanks for what you do.
Absolutely.
All right. We have Dana Banker coming up. Dana is joining us now. Actually, is the
She's
winner
one
of the
award
Breaking News Award from Parkland. Thank you so much for joining us. And obviously, we're talking about a very tragic, a very difficult story from day one to tell. And you spent a long time taking a look at this.
That's true. And there's kind of a saying in newsrooms, there's no crying in a newsroom. And there was actually quite a lot of crying in our newsroom the past year. And it was, we're from South Florida, so we've had a lot of major stories.
Right.
We cover a lot of major stories, but nothing ever like this. It was just so sad and so tragic. And but we really wanted to make a difference, and we committed ourselves to finding out answering every question we could about what went wrong.
I mean, you have that emotion, and as a journalist, you have to take that emotion and you deal with it at that moment, and you say, I have to set this aside because now I have to start looking at the facts of what transpired on this horrific day.
I think for us, that emotion turned into a passion to really find out what went wrong, and it was a battle. I mean, a lot of the institutions involved really didn't want to talk about some of the specifics that went wrong. I mean, clearly,
nobody wants to have the
shooter
finger
is to
pointed at
blame
them.
for everything that happened, but there were so many systemic problems that happened that we just felt it was imperative that we look at that, and we kind of channeled our energy that way. And
when you received the notification that you were going to be here, that you had won, what was the reaction for your team, knowing all the other journalists that you were up against?
I'll be honest, we were really proud. We were really proud, and we were really honored. And there's so much great work that's been honored by this association, and we were absolutely honored to win, and we really appreciate it, and we're very happy to be here.
Can you even figure out how many man hours it took to do the type of reporting that you did to win this award?
I can't. It was a lot. I mean, in the beginning, we reorganized our whole newsroom. We basically just created a new structure to focus on all the many angles of the story. And we changed that a few times through the year, and ultimately we had a core of probably 8, 10, 12 reporters who were very focused on it all year long. But it was a lot. But I think it was worth it because I think we made a difference.
You brought some of your team with you from the Sunset.
I did, and I think they're all upstairs.
They all went upstairs.
they all left.
They sent them upstairs, but I wish they were
it's
here
almost time for the
because
show.
they're a fabulous team, and I'm very proud of what the team did, and we're all really honored to be
Investigative
here. We really
journalism, of course, lives on FOIA requests a lot of times. So I imagine you had several in this instance.
We had a lot. We filed them first thing in the morning. The shooting was in the afternoon on a Wednesday. Thursday morning, we filed a bunch of requests, and it was a battle. We had lawsuits right and left. We had a lot of other media join us in the lawsuits and in the cause of the First Amendment. And but it was a battle, and honestly, we're still having those battles.
I bet you are.
And so we're here now, and that's great. But we're definitely not done with this story. There's
Well, it's
much
a night
more
of
to do. And
celebration for the First
Unfortunately, it
Amendment.
continues on, and Dana,
It
we
does.
congratulate you.
Thank you
Congratulations.
so much.
And hearty congratulations to the entire team upstairs. We'll get to celebrate a little bit later.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Thank you all very much.
We want to bring up now Deborah Adams Simpson. She's the winner of the Environmental Journalism Award. Deborah's just walking in right now. Hello.
How are you?
Thanks so much for being here. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Talk to me a little bit about the story. 5-part series, am I correct on that?
A multi-part series. National Geographic for 130 years has been on the side of science, on the side of facts, on the side of the planet. And so that's what really led us to decide we wanted to explore and expose this global plastics crisis and also encourage people to do something about it.
I'm not allowed to use plastic straws in my house anymore. It's banned because of you, basically.
I really do think the story has made an impact, and I'm not just saying that because it's a project that we took on. Even when I go into restaurants, I'm always sort of pausing and waiting to see what kind of straw I'm going to get. So I do think we're making a difference. I received some numbers today that more than 170,000 people have taken the pledge to reduce plastics in their life, and that's about 210 million pieces of plastic that won't
When
be
you see
out there.
reports of the gigantic, of course, Pacific garbage patch, the size of 2 states of Texas, and I mean that really shines a light on the issue, but it's amazing journalism like yours that also shows another side of things. And what was the biggest challenge to tackle this specific story for you?
Well, there's so much research and there's so much science, and the problem is so large, and so figuring out how to get our arms around it probably was among the biggest challenges. Laura Parker, the writer, actually did an amazing job. I'm accepting the award tonight, but I wasn't the writer or editor of the story. But we used every resource we had. Nat Geo's arresting photography, our social media platforms. And so for a really big story, we tried to tackle it in a big way. And that is just a one-time deal. It's a story that we're continuing to stay with and thinking about how we can continue to make a difference.
What did it mean when you were told you won this award?
Laura Parker was thrilled to learn that she had won the award. There was so much amazing journalism this year. As it happened, I was a judge in a different category of this award, and so I saw firsthand the volume of amazing content that journalists across the country have done this year. So to be able to rise to the top of that field really was rewarding. And this is also the first time National Geographic has won a Scripps Howard Award, so we were particularly excited.
Well, congratulations to you and your entire team on winning the Scripps Howard Award for Environmentalism. We will see you upstairs.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, you know what? For the winners in the categories tonight, there's an actual opportunity for them to be recognized for their work. They will each receive a nice trophy and monetary award, but there is still a bit of mystery and suspense as they all are in competition for the Impact Award, the award of awards, really. And we're going to find out who wins the Impact Award at the end of the award show tonight, so you're going to have to stay tuned for that.
I'm going to twist your arm to find out because I think he did some work already.
I
He
may
knows.
know. I may
You
know.
might, right? All right, so judging entries like all of these can be extremely hard work, challenging. As the person standing with me now knows very well, this is Robert Stewart. He's director of the E.W. Scripps School of Journalism at the Ohio University. Go Bobcats. So I have to ask, what is it like to face all of these, and I mean this, you're looking at so many different entries from fantastic journalists and organizations across the country, and you guys have to whittle it down and say, these are the best.
I mean, that's one of the hardest jobs in my year is to help pick the winner, but it's also one of the most inspiring jobs, and that's why it's always great to be part of the judging panel. I've been honored to be the chair of the judging panel for the investigative for the last several years, so you can see the quality of the work over time. It just, in spite of the challenges faced in journalism, the quality of this work is so great.
Is it getting better and better each year, the quality of work?
I think I'm more inspired every year, and I think it's because I know the headwind is greater, and the odds of doing this kind of work get harder and harder, and yet it still remains top notch. And we're seeing, the winner of the Farfel category was an amazingly well put together piece that involved local journalists in Burma and Myanmar and journalists back home. So a really incredible team.
What would you say is a common thread maybe that you've seen that's been critical to journalism over the years? When you talk about investigative work, there has to be some sort of a common thread. Well, certain things kind of change, techniques change. What's the common thread you see?
The techniques do change some. You'll see a lot of data journalism some years. There's always going to be data journalism present in some of these categories. But you'll also see just persistence and the unwillingness to give up. And this is, of course, a trait that, as a professor, I'm trying to instill in students. And when you have winning work like this, it's great to show students that persistence really does pay off.
Right.
Now, some stories are, they're not going to result in anything, but the ones we're highlighting obviously did.
And with just a couple seconds left, how much does multimedia journalism matter?
It can be really important to the story, but it also can be very secondary.
Okay.
Last year the winner of the investigative was the New York Times for the Harass series.
Right.
There was
The
no
Me Too
real
movement.
multimedia in that. That's just hardcore journalism.
Well, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your efforts. Go enjoy the
Thank you
show.
very
We're
much.
going to wrap up ours here in a moment. It is almost time for the show to start. The room is clearing out here. It's actually pretty well cleared out.
Pretty quiet in here, actually.
And so, Craig, back to that thing.
Yeah.
You did all the voiceovers for this show, so you get to say, and the winner of the award is, and so
I know
who
all
wins.
the answers. I know all
You
the
win.
answers.
You know who wins the Impact Award? You going to tell me?
I do. Well, no, because here in about 8 seconds, the show's going to start, so you can just stay tuned and find out who won for yourself.
All right, it's a great show ahead, folks. Stay tuned, and thanks so much for joining us.
Tonight is the 66th Scripps Howard Awards, recognizing the year's finest journalism. This year, judges poured over 908 entries and named 15 winners. One of them will take home the evening's biggest honor, the Impact Award.
One of the great things about the Scripps Howard Awards is it cuts across all platforms. We're all journalists, regardless of what platform we use.
The winners shine light in dark places.
Our profession has a more noble cause. Right now, journalists are putting their lives on the line, their reputations on the line, and when we recognize all that they do in their hard work, the sacrifices that they make, the storytelling, what we do is important, what we do is impactful. Information is power, and so much of what we do is bring our audience, bring America, bring the world information that they can use to live their lives better. And if you are able to do it in a way that ignites imagination, sparks a vision or drive, moves someone to take that next step, then you've really done your job.
It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 66th Annual Scripps Howard Awards from Memorial Hall in downtown Cincinnati. Good evening, everyone. I'm Michelle Miller. I am co-host of CBS This Morning Saturday. And I'm just thrilled and honored to be here today, to be here tonight, to host you in this most amazing time and this most amazing space. The Scripps Howard Foundation believes in lighting the way for a better tomorrow. It endeavors to advance the cause of the free press by encouraging journalistic excellence. And tonight, make no mistake, this is a celebration of that excellence. This year's winners held the powerful accountable. They gave the disenfranchised a voice. They empowered a people to be engaged. We journalists, we're the first guardians and the first guards of our own democracy. It is our job to seek the truth. It is our job to be transparent and to seek transparency, and it is our job to act with courage. 2 journalists from Myanmar are among the winners tonight. Regretfully, they can't be here with us. Reuters reporters Wa Lone and Jo Sou sit in prison right now for their efforts in uncovering the truth about a massacre in Myanmar. Now, know that we have not forgotten them, and we haven't forgotten their sacrifice. Also among the winners is a Tennessee newspaper that documented the deaths and the illnesses of workers who cleaned the nation's largest coal ash spill. Many of you might remember that. And in San Jose, a TV station that followed young transgender children and investigated a lack of teacher training for the growing number of transgender students. Now, one of tonight's winners will take home a special prize. It's called the Impact Award, and they get an additional $10,000 for it. We will also announce the 3 finalists later in this show. So we want to say a hearty congratulations to every single one of you here in the audience today. Your work, it inspires us all, and I hope that it gives you a rush to do more. Tonight, we'll pay a special tribute to the work and the legacy of one of the most inspirational journalists of the 20th century, Scripps Howard, or Scripps correspondent, Ernie Pyle. Now, he wrote extraordinary stories about ordinary people. How often have we been tasked to do that?
will honor his immeasurable contribution to the craft of human interest storytelling. We want to express our gratitude to the E.W. Scripps Company, station WCPO9 on your side, and Scripps National Brand Newsy for all of their support for tonight's awards. Also, here this evening are members of the Board of Trustees of the Scripps Howard Foundation, the E.W. Scripps Company, and the Scripps and Howard families. We welcome them and everyone in the audience here in Memorial Hall in Cincinnati and those watching back at home across the country and around the world. You are about to see some amazing examples of journalistic excellence. And we hope you seek out more on the winning works. A caution though, a caution to our audience both here and at home. Some of this subject matter, it's graphic. It may not be appropriate for younger audiences, so take care. But without further ado, let's begin with the specialty awards. Here's the work of our winner in the visual journalism category.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in visual journalism. The winner is Marcus Yam from the Los Angeles Times.
He did work on the Palestinian struggle with the Israelis in the Gaza Strip. The reunification of a Guatemalan father and son who were separated at the border when they came across in Texas. They came back together in LA and met after a couple of months, and the son thought that the father had been killed. And then California wildfires, where rather than concentrating just on the destruction, he concentrated on what happened to the people.
He used both lighting and composition and sequencing to their best effect. And it was he produced it in such a way that it was a true, beautiful piece of visual narrative. It pulled you in, kept you in there all the way through. He wasn't afraid to get close. It just amazed me in some of the scenes he captured, how in the middle of it he was. He jolts you and makes you really think about what those situations are and how it kind of makes you think about how would I be if I was in that.
He just paints that compelling picture of humanity. There's no denying that you're looking at truth right there. It was just outstanding. You know, 3 compelling stories, and beyond that, his portrait series.
It stood out above all others. It was perfection.
We welcome Marilyn Scripps, great-granddaughter of E.W. Scripps and daughter of Charles Scripps. She presents the Scripps Howard Award for Visual Journalism and a check for $10,000 to Marcus Yam, photographer from the Los Angeles Times.
I would like to thank the Scripps Howard Foundation for hosting this event and Marilyn for bestowing me this incredible honor. It goes without saying, I am grateful that my newspaper, the Los Angeles Times, is committed to not just local news and accountability, but also committed to issues and events across the country and the world. I would like to share this award with these folks. My colleagues Hannah and Ahmed, who put their lives at risk by helping us report on the violence that erupted on the Israel-Gaza border and the aftermath that ensued. They followed me to the front lines and stood firm even as live ammunition rained down around us. Guatemalan father and son, Hermelindo and Jefferson, were separated for 46 days at the US-Mexico border, and despite their trauma and hardship, they found the courage to share their story with us. Thank you to my editors, Alan Hagman, Robert St. John, who worked tirelessly in advocating for outstanding visual journalism. and to my director of photography, Calvin Halm, for constantly using the allegory of chariots in our conversations every day as a metaphor for striving for exceptionalism. Lastly, the person I'd like to thank the most is my best friend and my spouse, Jenny, who, when we first met, thought she was marrying an aerospace engineer. Without her, I would not be the person I am today, so thank you, I love you, and thank you again, I appreciate it.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in opinion. The Walker Stone Award. The winner, Jeffrey Garrett, for What Are They Hiding? The Palestine Herald Press in Palestine, Texas.
The winning piece of work distinguished itself because the editorials were not only clearly written and not only confronted local powers that many newspapers would be intimidated about writing so forcefully about. It came from a really tiny newspaper, a newspaper that isn't even published 7 days a week in Texas, and they took on football, they took on the local sheriff, they took on the local cops, they questioned the rush to execute death row prisoners.
What Are They Hiding? Questioned the secrecy surrounding the local sheriff's office and the death of 2 inmates. The editorial prompted a lawsuit and a federal investigation.
His editorials, I found them remarkable. The very thought of taking on the local sheriff and taking on the other symbols of authority is amazing.
Another editorial criticized an athletic committee's decision to keep a football player off the field.
It also was sort of an editorial about what kind of place is this? Are we a place that's going to treat this young man so unfairly? And that's the kind of question. What kind of place is this that only local journalistic institutions can tackle?
Please welcome Chris Bannon, Chief Content Officer for Scripps national brand, Stitcher. Chris presents the Walker Stone Award for Opinion and a check for $10,000 to Jeffrey Garrett, editor of the Palestine Herald Press.
Don't sweat this, I'm going to keep it under an hour. Just a few thank yous first to the Scripps Howard Foundation for taking seriously an entry from a very small rural area. To my love and heart, Alicia LaShawn Garrett, and my parents for their undying love and support. To CNHI and Herald Press publisher Jake Mike, who stood behind these sometimes rowdy editorials and gave him some sleepless nights, I'm sure. And to Ron Zwankowski, the former editor of the Detroit Free Press, who taught me to stop clearing my throat and just spit it out. Journalism is more than a job, it's more than a career, it's more than a profession, it's a calling. It's taken this blue-collar kid, former factory worker and jazz drummer around the world and put me next to some of the most powerful people on the planet. But far more important, it's put me in nearly 100 state prisons, federal prisons, and county jails, advocating for the right of prisoners for adequate health care, education, and the right to go home as returning citizens with dignity. It's put me inside a Salvation Army rehab center on the east side of Detroit, where I spent 5 days with a heroin addict, watching him scream, cry, and go through the horrific agony of withdrawal. It's allowed me to walk hand in hand with a young man from Southwest Detroit as he lost his life struggling to get out of a gang. And for nearly 20 years as a writer for the Detroit Free Press, it allowed me to chronicle the inside story of a magnificent city, not of its death spiral and devastation, but of the beauty, courage, and tenacity of its people. As we enter a new era of journalism with all kinds of funny phrases like monetized content, whatever that means, where exploding technology and imploding budgets threaten to make human contact almost superfluous and turn us all into content factories. Let's always take time to unplug and get the hell out of the office. Let's remember that our commitment is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the uncomfortable. Our calling is to the people. The real story always has been and always will be with them. Thank you.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in environmental reporting. The Edward J. Meeman Award. The winner, Laura Parker for Planet or Plastic, National Geographic. With its June issue, National Geographic began an in-depth look at the impact of single-use plastics on society and the environment.
This winning entry was of a magnitude that you rarely see in journalism, and its impact, I think, on the national, even the global conversation was something that I have not seen very many times in my life.
It's probably one of those pivotal moment points, where it galvanizes the issue and it forces us to pay attention.
The visuals were incredibly compelling. The writing was comprehensive and crisp and convincing and clean.
How many of us stop and think about what we're doing about it? Oh, I'm going to the supermarket. They have plastic bags there, but that's okay. Or what about those straws? So it really drove it home.
She gave amazing facts and figures, and it was a little frightening. And it made me realize that every single thing that I buy and that is available out there in the stores never disappears. She made it a global problem. She made us realize that this is not just your local city dump or your own recycling problem, that it is everywhere, it's in the oceans, and it has become a bigger problem than we even realize.
Joining us is Austin Haidt, grandson of Charles Scripps and great-great-grandson of E.W. Scripps. He presents the Edward J. Meeman Award for Environmental Reporting and a check for $10,000 to Deborah Adams Simmons, executive editor for culture at National Geographic.
Good evening. Thank you so much. At National Geographic, we're on the side of science, we're on the side of facts, and we're on the side of the planet. That's what led us to undertake this project to explore and expose the global plastic crisis, and really to encourage the public to do something about it. We used every tool we have, from arresting photojournalism to the powerful award-winning writing of Laura Parker, to the science of our nonprofit partners, National Geographic Society, to campaigns across our social media platforms to encourage the public to get involved and to own this problem. I learned earlier tonight that 170,000 people have taken a pledge to reduce their use of plastics, eliminating 210 million pieces of plastics from our world. So not only is National Geographic using all of our tools, but we're really empowering communities to take action to make the world a better place. Thank you so much. Good night.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in business and financial reporting. The William Brewster Stiles Award. The winner, Implant Files by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, the NBC Investigative Unit, the Associated Press, and more than 50 media partners.
This story is about things that are implanted into people, an area of medicine that is largely under-regulated. Hips that help people to walk, artificial lenses that allow people to see.
Certain devices help people, but you have certain devices that really permanently scar people. It makes sense to team up with a big team of journalists and say, why are these implants hurting the patients in our country?
250 journalists from 36 countries spent a year investigating faulty medical devices around the world. They found rushed approval processes, low standards, critical information hidden from patients, and the consequences of defective implants.
The reporters discovered that 83,000 people have died from medical implants in the last decade. 1.7 million people have been injured. 500,000 implants have had to be removed because they were potentially dangerous. It's a $400 billion industry, that there are far more dangers, problems, and catastrophes than we ever understood.
The fact that people are dying and becoming seriously sick from some of these medical devices and implants being put in their bodies really made the stories in the series stand out. Just digging into FDA records, the Freedom of Information Act requests. I mean, there were more than 1,500 FOI requests to produce this series. Just the incredible amount of reporting that went into this is something that I would want my students to read.
The regulations that we all think are there to protect us are not doing as good a job as we'd like. And thanks to this series, a new database was created of 75,000 medical implant devices that we can now go search internationally and find out if our device has been on a recall list or an unsafe list or any other kind of danger list before our doctor implants it.
The investigation prompted several announcements at the FDA, including strengthening the oversight of surgical mesh, an alert on defective pain pumps, plans to increase breast implant safety, and an announcement on reforms for the medical device approval process.
Thank God for journalists. If we didn't know about these kinds of things, we would be a lot poorer in health and in pocket.
Give a warm welcome to Scripps Howard Foundation trustee and vice president of local media operations for the E.W. Scripps Company, Ed Fernandez. He presents the William Bruce.
For many people, especially women, the pain and suffering they experienced was compounded by the fact that their complaints were dismissed or ignored by the device companies, by regulators, and sometimes even their own doctors. Some of the structural problems we identified, including overuse of a fast lane pathway that allows devices to be approved without clinical testing, remain in place. But in the 5 months since we published, regulators, including the FDA, have pledged reforms and have pulled some of the most problematic devices from the market, including just this week, a plastic mesh that's blamed for more than 100,000 injuries. I want to thank the hundreds of patients who trusted us to tell their stories and whose refusals to stay quiet helped propel these reforms. And if you know anything about ICIJ, you know that partnering with other journalists isn't just a feature of what we do, it is core to our mission. So I want to recognize the awesome journalists on the stage with me tonight from NBC News who worked alongside us, and our other partners from around the globe who, in the words of one journalist, worked like maniacs to make this. Actually, I think she said we were maniacs, to make this project a success. So if you have maniacal tendencies in a story that you think could help shake the world, and if the prospect of working with a few dozen or a few hundred other journalists doesn't totally freak you out, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for this honor.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in breaking news. The winner, the South Florida Sun Sentinel for Parkland, a breaking story that demanded a long-term commitment. On February 14, 2018, 17 students and staff at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida were murdered in a school shooting. In the initial hours of coverage, the Sun Sentinel's main story was updated 229 times. The newsroom produced 65 staff stories and 197 staff photos.
What made the South Florida Sun Sentinel's coverage unique was the staff's effort in truly producing cross-platform storytelling, using every available tool in the toolbox.
The Sun Sentinel combed social media sites like Snapchat and turned to students like David Hogue for first-hand accounts.
At around 2:30, we heard a gunshot in my AP Environmental Science class, and we initially thought it was a drill. We heard more gunshots, and that was when we realized this was not a drill.
The coverage really was stunning in its breadth, but there was also a lot of contextual reporting that they did as well. The news organization was really deliberate in its planning and thinking about the coverage. Every corner of the newsroom was involved, from the sports writers to the star columnists who they dispatched to Newtown, Connecticut. The coverage really was significant, and I think created a model for how we cover these things.
Their devotion to accuracy was what among the things that impressed us. They were less interested in getting it first than they were in getting it right. How often do we see that in this day and age?
Take a look at this winning team of journalists from the South Florida Sun Sentinel. It took all of these people, all of them, to report on the Parkland tragedy. They worked nonstop. They worked harder than they had worked in their lives, some said. We welcome part of the group here tonight, and we welcome Laura Tomlin, Senior Vice President of the National Media Division for Scripps. Laura presents the Breaking News Award and a check for $10,000 to Julie Anderson, Editor-in-Chief of the Sun-Sentinel, who is accepting on that team's behalf.
Parkland, Florida is in the Sun-Sentinel's backyard. So when an editor heard on a police scanner a shooting unfolding at the town's Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High, we covered it like any newsroom would. We threw everyone we had at it. In the following days, we wrote stories about the 17 lives lost and 17 wounded, the shooter, the vigils, the student movement, and March for Our Lives in Washington. We covered drama at the Florida legislature, where a gun law passed that would have been unthinkable a few weeks before. We filmed video vignettes of survivors telling their stories that made us weep. After the initial rush, we refocused and asked a basic question: how did this massacre happen? And the answer to that question led to many more jaw-dropping exclusives as we uncovered the full story of Parkland, layer by layer. I want to thank Managing Editor Dana Banker and Metro Editor Randy Roguski for guiding the news coverage, and the journalists next to me who represent the Sun-Sentinel newsroom. Here today are Brittany Wallman, David Fleschler, Lisa Hurriash, Linda Trishetta, Doreen Christensen, and Amy Beth Bennett. Finally, I want to thank publisher Nancy Meyer for supporting us and being our buffer to those who would have preferred we drop the story. We could not have done this without her. On behalf of the newsroom, we dedicate this award to the community of Parkland.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in community journalism. The winner, Jamie Satterfield of the Knoxville News-Sentinel, for the devastation of TVA's coal ash spill. In March 2017, Satterfield began investigating the treatment of men and women tasked with cleaning up the 2008 coal ash spill in Roane County, Tennessee. At 7.3 million tons, it was the largest coal ash spill ever. The Tennessee Valley Authority hired an outside contractor to handle the cleanup.
We had to wade in it. It was muddy. It was dry. And the wind blowed. You had dust. It was an horrific thing to work in.
You wear a respirator, don't you? And I looked at him and said, no, they say we don't need one, that this won't hurt us. And he's like, all this will kill you.
It's hard to believe that many people that you worked around have passed. And most of it is from cancer and lung problems and breathing problems.
So if you were down here, you were just collateral damage and you were going to get tossed to the side. They didn't care if you lived or died.
So far, Satterfield identified 350 victims and can verify 40 deaths.
To see how the story unfolded, it really drew you in. It was gripping, but the level of investigative journalism that took place at that level in that market was quite stunning, and it was unparalleled work.
She withstood a tremendous amount of pressure to stop reporting, claims, almost like fake news. The workers sued the independent contractor responsible for the cleanup for not having protective gear, respirators, safety garments to protect them. When the case got to court, the judge commented that her reporting was the reason that it brought this billion-dollar company to the table. It was incredible journalism in as much as that it held this big company accountable.
I think the biggest thing that hit me when I was reading these stories was just complete shock that this could still take place in 2017, 2018. This was good old-fashioned journalism. She worked sources. She got real people to come forward and talk about the impact this was having to their families. She was able to expose different angles involving the government and the businesses involved. You chase down every angle, and that's what Jamie did.
Welcome Leon Clark, Vice President and General Manager of KGTV in San Diego. He presents the Community Journalism Award and a check for $10,000 to Jamie Satterfield, investigative legal affairs journalist of Knoxville News Sentinel.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the foundation for all that you do for journalism. But frankly, the best award is hanging around my neck. This is a necklace that these workers gave me. They pray for me. They send me emails and just to lift my spirits as I continue to investigate what the Tennessee Valley Authority and Jacobs Engineering did to them. They lied to them. They told them they were safe. And when they started questioning that, they lied to them more, they mocked them, and then they walked away from them. Mike Shelton's widow can't afford to pay her electricity bill, and TVA's executive director makes $8 million a year. Billy Isley's widow held him in her lap as he died because he said, "We can't afford to call an ambulance. This should not happen in America. We should be protecting our workers, and we sure shouldn't be lying to them." And there are workers all over this nation today who are toiling in coal ash, which is toxic as all get out, if I want to be country about it, without adequate protection, and that needs to change. TBA needs to stop lying to the public about coal ash, and these workers and their families, they took this stuff home every night, and now their children are sick, their wives are sick, many of them have no health insurance. I've got one fellow with skin cancer, and you know what his solution is? He puts on lotion and wraps up his body in soft clothing at night. That should not happen in America. So thank you for this award, but I've got to get back to work because I will not stop.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence and distinguished service to the First Amendment, the Edward Willis Scripps Award. The winner, the Dallas Morning News for Pain and Profit. In a 2-year investigation, the Dallas Morning News uncovered how thousands of Texans were being hurt by a system that financially rewarded companies that withheld doctor-ordered treatments, equipment, and life-sustaining drugs. Among the victims was a baby in foster care, denied nursing care. It resulted in a catastrophic injury, and a woman paralyzed from the neck down denied hours of needed home aid care.
They involve sick children, injured people who are in desperate situations because the care that they are legally entitled to was just not supplied for them, and there was nobody overseeing the delivery of those services.
Reporters filed 170 public record requests in Texas and in 16 other states. They also gathered financial records from companies, finding some were over-reporting expenses.
They simplified a very difficult subject, made it very, very readable, but most importantly, they used state and federal open access laws to explain a very interesting and important story, and they got results.
The Dallas Morning News investigation led to wide-ranging changes to Texas's Medicaid for managed care. Texas lawmakers launched their own investigation and are overhauling laws on privatized Medicaid providers. The state spent $7 million on hiring 100 new Medicaid regulators.
I think what the Dallas Morning News piece shows us is that you have to be continually resourceful when you're thwarted by companies or state regulators who don't want the truth out. Just a really amazing piece of work that sets a gold standard for other news organizations around the country to use as a model in reporting on Medicaid reimbursements in their states.
Joining us on stage is Rich Bainey, chairman of the board of directors for E.W. Scripps Company. He presents the Edward Willis Scripps Award for distinguished service to the First Amendment and a check for $10,000 to J. David McSwain, investigative reporter for the Dallas Morning News.
Thank you so much for this honor. In honor of my editor, Leslie Eaton, who unceremoniously slaughtered so many of my words, I'll try to keep this brief. This was a really hard story to tell. What looks like persistence now, I thought was me just being a really, really annoying person who knew the records law. But it was also an expensive story. It took a lot of time and a lot of our attorneys' resources. And for that, I really owe a debt of gratitude to my editor, Leslie Eaton, our top editor, Mike Wilson, and our publishers, Jim Maroney, and now Grant Moise. And above all, thank you to the humans, the patients, the people who trusted us and shared their stories. Thank you.
Today is very meaningful. Today is April 18th. It is the 74th anniversary of the death of Ernie Pyle in the South Pacific. And in his honor, today is National Columnist Day. We look back at the life, the legacy, and all of the works of Ernie Pyle, a man who wrote simply, but moved so many.
I love the infantry because they're the underdogs. They're the mud, rain, frost, and wind boys. They have no comforts, and they even learn to live without the necessities. And in the end, they're the guys that wars can't be won without.
The Admiral of the Fleet's 5 stars flying above the Pacific Naval Headquarters at Guam are ready to follow Admiral Nimitz, left, about to set out for the conquest of Okinawa. And the invasion forces aboard cast worry aside for the moment and beat a tune out on the old squeeze box, while Ernie Pyle, left, watches a fast-stepping jitterbug run up a little hot rug cutting for the biggest invasion fleet ever assembled in the Pacific.
This newsreel was released just 9 days before Ernie Pyle's death. In his 3 decades of column writing, he would be read by millions in hundreds of newspapers. In spring of 1945, the much-beloved Ernie Pyle was heading to the South Pacific, where he would write the last of his famous columns.
His observational skills were tremendous. He wrote in a simple style that everyone could agree, and his persona was so homespun and friendly that it was easy to read.
Ernie Pyle came from humble beginnings.
As a kid growing up in Dana, Indiana, which is a small farm town in western Indiana, coming to Indiana University was a big leap for him because he just came from nowhere. And he quickly established himself as a somebody on this campus, and he became the editor of the Indiana Daily Student, a very good college newspaper.
Pyle left Indiana University 1 semester short of graduation. From there, he wrote for a northern Indiana newspaper before being hired by Scripps Howard newspapers.
Ernie Pyle started out in 1923 with Scripps Howard newspapers, and over the years he did everything from, he was the nation's first aviation columnist, he was an editor, which he did not like very much, he was a travel and human interest reporter, but ultimately at the peak of his career, he became a war correspondent covering World War II. And he did that like no one else. He has these very sharp, short, vivid vignettes that he writes that really bring the reader to the front line with the soldiers.
As Eleanor Roosevelt much said, she'd get up in the morning, she had a cup of tea, and the first thing she read every day was Ernie Pyle's dispatches.
In this war, I've known a lot of officers who were loved and respected by the soldiers under them. But I've never crossed the trail of any man as beloved as Captain Henry T. Waskow of Belton, Texas.
I remember even thinking as a kid, he's not writing about
the generals and the troop movement and the theater in the Pacific. You know, he's writing about one guy on a hill.
His writings about those ordinary soldiers earned him a Pulitzer Prize in 1944.
The thing that's really sort of, I think, part of his legacy and his gift to human service reporting, he didn't just write about those soldiers from afar. He ate with them, he marched with them, he went into danger alongside them, and, you know, ultimately he was killed alongside them in battle. And what he wrote just came from this deep reservoir of knowledge and respect for the soldiers that he was covering. And you still see that today in the great human interest writers. They know their subjects. They walk in their footsteps.
So many are trying to keep the legacy of Ernie Pyle alive. From the National Society of Newspaper Columnists,
we focus on the awareness of column writing and point of view writing. We established National Columnist Day on April 18th.
To the Ernie Pyle Legacy Foundation.
Our broad mission is to ensure and continue the legacy of Ernie Pyle. He was a master storyteller. He had the ability to listen to people, to hear their stories, and to write their stories. And we would like to continue that type of reporting in the journalism field today.
And the Scripps Howard Foundation.
We're just incredibly proud to have the name of this great Scripps Howard journalist, Ernie Pyle, on the Human Interest Reporting Award.
Lane DeGregory is a two-time winner of the Scripps Howard Awards Ernie Pyle Award.
The Ernie Pyle Award was the first big award I ever won for my writing. To win it was really validating. I felt like, oh, maybe I know what I'm doing here.
DeGregory felt honored to win an award named in Ernie Pyle's memory.
Every generation of journalism students that's grown up, they've all read his stories, that they've all experienced war through the individual because of Ernie Pyle. And I think it shaped the way that we cover war. I think it made a lot of people realize they can write about people instead of processes or politics, and that resonates with a whole different audience.
This year, the judges said the entries for the Ernie Pyle Award were outstanding.
Anyone who thinks American journalism is dead should judge this category. It's just, it's inspiring how good the reporting and the writing is.
There were 145 entries this year, and one rose up above the rest. The winner for excellence in human interest storytelling, the Ernie Pyle Award, is Pamela Koloff for Blood Will Tell, from the New York Times and ProPublica.
The piece that we selected as the winner of the Ernie Pyle Award was powerful on two levels. It was a story really about science, about blood pattern tests in murder trials and how reliable it is. But woven in with that was a very powerful human story about a couple who, by all appearances, had a warm and loving marriage, but the husband ended up going to prison for the murder of his wife.
The strong narrative in the story is that he very likely did not do it, and it raised significant questions about putting so much evidence on small blood specks and how they are interpreted by single experts. And it was an absolutely riveting tale in so many ways.
Koloff reconstructed the 1985 murder of Mickey Bryan in Clifton, Texas.
I think the strength of the reporting came from the fact that Pamela Koloff actually learned about blood pattern evidence herself. She went to school, took a course so that she could be knowledgeable about this, and her reporting called into question the validity of this science.
And what she does with this particular story is she shows you the human cost through this one-man story. Pamela Koloff is one of the country's most meticulous, patient, amazing reporters, and she always gets to the heart of whatever story she's working on. In this one, she just took the reader so deep inside this case and deep inside this marriage and deep inside the losses felt by this man still in prison.
The next presenter is a cousin of Ernie Pyle, Wynn Machineau. She and her husband Jerry will present the Ernie Pyle Award for Human Interest Storytelling and a $10,000 check to Pamela Koloff, senior reporter at ProPublica.
Thank you all so much. I can't overstate what an honor it is to try to even attempt to follow in the footsteps of Ernie Pyle. This is a wonderful moment for me. I wanted to make sure to thank the Scripps Howard Foundation, the Ernie Pyle Foundation, Mr. Pyle's family, who I've had the privilege of getting to know this week, the judges, and most importantly, my editors, Tracy Weber of ProPublica and Elena Silverman of the New York Times Magazine, who made this story what it is. And I also want to thank my beautiful family, Chad, Jake, and Lucy. This award coming right now has a lot of poignancy for me because Joe Bryan, who's the focus of my story, was denied parole earlier this month for the 7th time. And so I hope that the attention that this brings to this story helps to remind us that there's still people in prison right now who were convicted on the strength of very dubious forensic testimony. Thank you so much.
The Scripps mission is dedication to serving our audiences, a passion for being authentic. That's how we got our start. And today, our light has never shined so bright. Changing with the times is our culture. We evolve. We're out in front with new ideas, new ways of using technology, and what's truly important right now to the people we serve. We're fighters for the First Amendment, committed to journalism and impactful storytelling, to connecting with and entertaining our audiences, to serving businesses locally, nationally, and internationally, to providing great content across any platform where consumers want to find us. It's what they expect and better trust us to provide. As leaders in the media industry, we're not afraid to take chances. From coast to coast, we're local media brands embedded in our communities. We're national media brands, Newsy, the Cates Networks, Stitcher, and Triton. We're celebrating the next generation with the Scripps National Spelling Bee and deliberate about giving back with the Scripps Howard Foundation. At the core, the Scripps ethos is simple: give light, and the people will find their own way.
Please welcome President and CEO of the E.W. Scripps Company, Adam Simpson.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 66th Scripps Howard Awards. It's been my honor and privilege to attend this award ceremony for more than 10 years. Every year, I look forward to this evening. It's the opportunity to stand shoulder to shoulder with journalists responsible for some of the best work of the previous year, and tonight is no exception. This room is filled with talented, dogged, and mission-driven journalists, the kind of journalists that I had always wanted to emulate in my own newsroom career in investigative journalism. We're coming together this evening to celebrate the outstanding work of those who have dedicated themselves to the instrumental role of journalism in our democracy. A fourth estate that serves as a check on government power, holds figures of authority accountable, and improves the lives of those we serve, the readers, the viewers, and listeners that make up our audiences. Now, make no mistake about it, journalism is a pursuit of public service. This is work that does not come without risk. All over the world, and even here in the United States, journalists are vilified for simply reporting the news. They're jailed for bringing to light uncomfortable truths. They're attacked, injured, and even murdered for pursuing stories the powerful would rather remain hidden from view. And yet, despite the myriad obstacles newsrooms face today, from the economic pressures that increasingly limit resources to the great personal risks I just talked about, every year that we gather together for this award ceremony, I'm incredibly heartened by the passion and dedication for the mission by journalists and storytellers like the ones with us tonight. The work we honor this evening is a testament to the fact that American journalism is resolute. The E.W. Scripps Company has been known throughout our 140-year history as being deeply rooted in the proud tradition of the free press, underwritten by an entrepreneurial spirit that has allowed us to evolve with a rapidly changing industry. We strive to be a good corporate citizen, to govern our company with integrity, to represent in our news coverage and among our employees everyone who calls our communities home, to be a good steward of the resources we use to build value for future generations, and most importantly, at a time when trust in the media is challenged and the lines of true objectivity are often blurred, Scripps must support the journalists across our local and national media organizations in their pursuit of the truth and their perseverance in bringing that truth to light. In fact, our company motto, "Give light and the people will find their own way," has served as a clarion call for our journalists since we adopted it nearly 100 years ago. Scripps also supports the work of journalists around the world who have endeavored to make this their life's work. This evening's finalists and winners have pursued and uncovered stories that have changed lives in communities across the country and on a global scale. From capturing the raw emotion of a story from behind the camera's lens, to using new mediums, tools, and technologies to uncover and present stories underreported across the world, and demonstrating all the while an unwavering dedication to investigative journalism. Those honored tonight have brought new and complex issues to light, accelerated solutions, and laid the groundwork for greater empathy. Working at daily local newspapers, emerging digital channels, and storied national media, the journalists here tonight represent the very best of our industry. Now, later in the show, we'll recognize one of these winners with the Impact Award, this competition's highest honor. Introduced at last year's show, this award recognizes journalism that serves the public through coverage of an issue that has led to pivotal change in policy or business practice. On behalf of the E.W. Scripps Company, the Scripps and Howard families, the Scripps Howard Foundation, whose commitment to journalism and the free press is essential to all we do, congratulations. We're honored tonight to celebrate your success. Thank you for giving light so the people can find their own way.
We are just 7 awards away from that Impact Award. This is it. In just a little while, we'll announce the 3 finalists, and one of them will take this beautiful statue and $10,000 home with them. But first, we have 4 platform awards to announce, and here is the winner for broadcast local coverage.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in broadcast local coverage. The Jack R. Howard Award. The winner, Transgender Kids, A Changing Student Body by KNTV TV, San Jose, California.
Do you feel like you're a little bit a boy?
A small bit in between.
Children as young as 3, convinced their own bodies don't reflect who they really are.
I'm really happy.
But how young is too young for kids to begin transforming their lives?
I personally feel it would be malpractice to withhold that kind of treatment.
The brightest medical minds are at odds.
It's this idea that if I behave like a girl, therefore I am a girl. Well, that's not necessarily true.
The whole idea was to try to explore the issue of when and how to help a child make a decision about their sexual identity. And you can imagine that a story like this might be sensational, it might be really divisive, and this was neither. It was so well done because it was so thoughtful.
They did the old-fashioned shoe leather reporting, but they were also putting together databases and digging through public records and filing FOIA requests. It had all points of view, including the children, the medical community, experts, psychologists, the families, teachers, just how everybody is kind of learning about this.
KNTV spent 2 years uncovering the lack of teacher training in the Bay Area on transgender issues. Their investigation prompted new training.
And we're going to talk a little bit about LGBTQ language and some of the things that you may be learning or hearing in your classrooms.
Have you had students who identify as trans?
Yeah. I have a student right now, as a matter of fact. I was the first adult ever that this particular child shared that they feel transgender. That's not the first time that's happened to me.
The investigation also followed a young child undergoing a procedure to block the start of puberty.
And when you meet those children, it just seems so obvious to you that the decision they're making is so clear. And I didn't expect that.
Sure, I'm a kid, but it doesn't take a genius to realize that I'm not a girl.
All it really takes is a couple of people in your life to say, we got you, to not feel so alone.
The sensitivity that the reporter had in dealing with the parents and the kids is remarkable. Had just the right touch.
She said, "Mommy, why did God make me a boy when I'm really a girl?"
This was a piece of journalism that was going to change the way we view sexual identity forever.
Why would I ever want to go back into that shell? Because I know deep down inside I am a boy. And I know I won't change my mind because being a boy is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Like, why would I ever want to be a girl again? Because I know that's not me.
Joining us is Brian Lawler, past Scripps Howard Foundation trustee and president of local media for the E.W. Scripps Company. He presents the Jack R. Howard Award for broadcast local coverage to Begad Shaban, investigative reporter for NBC Bay Area and former CBS News correspondent.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you to our loved ones who are here today. Donna, Kelly, Patty, Chuck, we love you. I'd like to ask the question tonight, what does it mean to be seen? Truly seen. Not just the way other people might view you, but as you know yourself to be. Imagine being told the person you think you are is wrong. Feeling like your own body has betrayed you. These are difficult questions even to ponder as an adult, but imagine coming to a cohesive conclusion at just 4 years old. The medical debate on how to best treat these children will likely go on for years. But in the meantime, whether you know it, will it, or want it, these kids right now want the very same things that all children want: to be seen. We dedicate this award to them tonight, and on behalf of our entire team, we say, we see you.
As journalists, I suspect that we have some sense of what it means to not be seen. And I think maybe that's because a lot of us are geeks and nerds and outcasts at heart. But seriously, it is a true joy to work with such dedicated and passionate journalists as Begad and Mark Villarreal and Bob Goldberger, and a photographer who is stuck in Thailand tonight, Tony Rutnushadate. For us to be honored by the Scripps Howard Foundation tonight gives us such rocket fuel for the work ahead. And we are so grateful, and believe me, we will use that fuel to make you proud. Thank you.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in broadcast national and international coverage. The Jack R. Howard Award, the winner, Putin's Covert War, on assignment with Richard Engel, MSNBC. Uncovering video of a dramatic 2018 confrontation between the U.S. and Russian paid mercenaries in Syria.
These recordings, authenticated by a senior U.S. military official, are of mercenaries, Russian-speaking mercenaries, reporting heavy losses. We had our butts kicked. One squadron lost 200 people. The Yankees, they said, knew we were coming, and they knew we were Russian.
Speaking with a double agent in hiding.
This is your KGB ID card.
Basically, license to kill.
All part of the on-assignment investigation.
MSNBC and Richard Engel, who has made his reputation going to places that you don't want to go, once again went there on our behalf. In this case, he was in Russia. and in Syria. And what he is doing is unraveling the extensive web of involvement that Russia has had in international affairs and in American political affairs.
True journalism, getting to the story, not being afraid to ask the tough questions, going into places where you could go in and maybe not come out of to get that story that was all there. And it was there in a kind of almost an old school pure way.
The series investigated a Russian hit list that includes an American-born investor.
They hate my guts. They're after me in every possible way.
And unraveled the backstory behind a Russian-born man who donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Trump campaign.
The storytelling is not just the narrative of the spoken word, it's the visuals that you're seeing in broadcast journalism. And so you've got drone shots, you've got extraordinary animation, and all of that is part of the narrative.
Putin's covert war had a level of investigative journalism, a level of research, time, hard work that brought a level of verification of what we believe is happening. It brought a level of verification that was astounding.
Please welcome Foundation trustee Jack Howard Potter, grandson of Jack R. Howard and great-grandson of Roy W. Howard. He will accept the Jack R. Howard Award for broadcast national or international coverage on behalf of Richard Engel of MSNBC News.
Richard Engel cannot be with us tonight. He is on assignment at Notre Dame in Paris. He sent us this message.
Good evening, I'm Richard Engel, and I'm very sorry that I'm not in the room with you tonight, but as you can see, I'm here in Paris, where I've been delayed by this terrible tragedy that has happened to the Notre Dame Cathedral, with the roof burned off, the spire burned off. But I've seen in Paris, this country, the people here coming together at a time when France, Europe, and the world are really struggling with issues of power, faith, and the meaning of truth. I strongly believe that journalism is a profession about truth-telling. It is a craft. It is a profession like doctors or lawyers. It is not something that can be done easily. Just anyone pick up a phone and point it in a direction. It takes training, it takes patience, it takes hard work, and it takes integrity. And we are so honored that you have chosen to recognize our work for this significant award. And also thank you for the reward. There is a significant monetary sum that comes with this, and we are donating that money to ProPublica, an organization that has consistently done hardworking and innovative journalism. So from me, from Paris, thank you very much.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in radio or podcast coverage. The Jack R. Howard Award. The winner, Believed by Michigan Radio. Believed is a 9-part podcast by Michigan Radio that explored how Dr. Larry Nassar was able to abuse hundreds of women and girls for more than 2 decades.
You were lucky if you had an injury where you got to go see Larry.
I started seeing Larry Nassar at the age of 8, right here in my hometown of Lansing.
Pain, that comes to me, their pain goes away. Like I've been called the body whisperer.
Larry gave us gifts, backpacks, shirts, a water bottle.
I think what this podcast did in a very well-written and well-reported and well-produced way was really help us understand what happened and how he gained the trust of these young girls, of their families, of the gymnastics community, and why he was able to perpetrate these crimes over so many years.
I found that the way that Believed shifted its focus across time and across different subjects, the way it moved from archive tape to police interrogation tapes to one-on-one interviews with victims and their families. The way that it was blended together, it allowed me to focus more clearly on what was really important in the story.
Nobody was protecting us.
I think my parents believed him.
I knew it was always going to happen.
What if no one believes me? What if everyone thinks I'm lying?
Those fears go through your head the whole time. What if I'm not believed?
It felt like a very important story that was told really well for the medium of audio. Believed is a really difficult story to listen to, and it's also very beautiful, and that's one of the amazing contradictions of it. that it can affect you so profoundly, and yet you need to keep listening to it.
Joining us is Trustee Emeritus of the Scripps Howard Foundation, daughter of Jack Howard and granddaughter of Roy Howard, Pam Howard. Pam presents the Jack R. Howard Award for radio or podcast in-depth coverage and a $10,000 check to Kate Wells, a reporter at Michigan Radio.
Thank you so much on behalf of the entire team of Believed here, co-host Lindsay Smith, our incredible editors, all the people who made this possible, and an enormous thank you to the Scripps Howard Foundation for this kind of recognition. It is truly amazing just to be recognized among journalists like this. What was so powerful to us about these women's stories was not just that they were strong and brave, although obviously they were. It is the grace, generosity, and selflessness that so many of them exhibited, not only in their fight over the last 20 years, but in the time and emotional energy that they gave us. Every time they talk about this, every time their families relive and try to unpack and understand what happened, they go back there and they have those experiences over and over, and they still took the time, gave the emotional energy that they didn't have to give, because they truly do want us to better understand how this happens. So I know that this means an enormous amount to them, and the fact that Scripps Howard was able to connect so powerfully with their stories means a great deal. Thank you.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in multimedia journalism. The winners, Michelle Meisner and Katie Worth of Frontline PBS and the Ground Truth Project for The Last Generation, an interactive film on the Marshall Islands. The Marshall Islands, located between Hawaii and Australia, are home to 50,000 people. All of them are in danger from rising seas, floods that sweep across the islands, salted groundwater, and dead reefs.
This one took the perspective of 3 children living on the Marshall Islands and talking about the future that they were going to face as sea level rises and threatens to swallow their island.
My mom woke me in the middle of the night. When I woke up, I saw a lot of water. It was around my knees. People were evacuating very quickly. I wasn't scared, but I was shocked. In that moment, I started talking to myself. Does king tide happen because we are bad people? Does it happen because of human activity? Does it happen because we make it happen? Or does it happen because it usually happens?
Michelle Meisner and Katie Worth spent a month on the island of Majuro, meeting families, visiting schools, and exploring sites impacted by consistent flooding.
Why we not react climate change?
Climate change jenaarmis kana kajara wale kazum kami galagal mese bakkar.
The piece also looked at the impact of U.S. nuclear testing conducted 75 years ago on Marshall Islands and the people who lived there.
Multimedia is a fascinating field, and this is a great example that includes moving video and audio, and important text telling a critical story. In this case, of how climate change may literally be endangering a place completely, wiping it out of existence in the lifetimes of some young people who live there now.
They use some graphics and mapping to explain some of the science behind it. They had some kind of text cars off to the side where you could dive deeper into some of the different issues.
The science was there, the reporting was there, but the children who were going to face this was their story. And it was just a very kind of a personal lens to see this crisis through.
I'm gonna stay watch, even if it means to drown.
Please welcome the great-great-grandson of company founder E.W. Scripps, member of the E.W. Scripps Board of Directors and Scripps Howard Foundation trustee, Mike Scagliotti. He presents the Multimedia Journalism Award and a $10,000 check to Katie Worth of Frontline PBS.
this is really cool. Thank you. So my brilliant co-producer, Michelle Meisner, couldn't be here tonight, but on behalf of both of us, we want to thank the Scripps Howard Foundation for this honor and for everything that you do for journalism. Our thanks is also owed to the teams and the leadership at Frontline and at the Ground Truth Project, who poured their prodigious talents into bringing this project to life. There's at least a dozen people without whom this project would not have been made. And as you all know, it takes a team to make something like this. And I especially want to thank Rainey Aronson, executive producer of Frontline, and Charlie Sennett, who runs Ground Truth, for their leadership. We also want to thank the many Marshallese people who lent us their time and their expertise so that we could accurately and respectfully tell this story. And finally, I want to thank 9-year-old Iserman and 12-year-old Julia, or 14-year-old Julia and 12-year-old Wilmer, who shared their stories with us. Scientists predict that unless we contain global carbon emissions, their island will become uninhabitable within their lifetime. But the Republic of the Marshall Islands isn't giving up hope. Wilmer, who was one of the kids you saw there, we decided we need to film him when he told us that he wanted to run for president of the Marshall Islands. And I hope that one day we will all be covering his campaign.
Please welcome Liz Carter, the president and CEO of the Scripps Howard Foundation.
The efforts of the Scripps Howard Foundation are at the crossroads of the classroom and the newsroom. The Scripps Howard Foundation envisions an informed and fully literate world where all people have access to accurate information that's relevant to their lives. We're on a mission to create a better informed world through journalism education and childhood literacy. Here's how we're working to create a better informed world.
The Scripps Howard Foundation gives back by giving light. They light the way for a better tomorrow by changing the story for good.
The Scripps Howard Foundation is a leader in supporting journalism education and literacy.
An investment in journalism education is an investment in America.
As journalists, we are being trained to be the most accurate and truth-telling. I want to restore that trust in the media. I want to tell everybody exactly what's happening and to keep digging at it and to not let anybody go unaccountable. And it's what I live my life to do.
For me, this internship took a lot of what we learned in the classroom into the newsroom, where we were able to write stories, research, and producing and editing.
Because it was that internship that really provided a foundation, mentoring, hands-on opportunity. And I still have mentors that I talk to. That was truly a launching point for me personally in my career.
Roy Howard Centers for Investigative Journalism are going to play a very, very important national role.
We are going to be preparing the next generation of great investigative reporters, and we're going to do this in a variety of ways using data skills and cutting-edge technology.
And that is something we had practiced a lot in the classroom, where being able to do data analysis and combing through records. But I think for young journalists entering the profession today, arming yourself with those skills early on is only going to be an asset.
The only thing that a journalist should be an advocate for is the truth. And what the Scripps Howard Awards do is recognize people who shine light in dark places and who tell stories that need to be told that otherwise wouldn't be told.
You learn about the world when you can read, and you have a lot of control over what you learn about. If you don't know how to read, you're really dependent on people around you.
I just love to read. I like reading because I get to learn about the world and math, science, and literature, and social studies.
I'm actually an immigrant, and I can't even imagine my life without books and the power of writing, communicating, and being able to express what I feel. And so to be an informed member of a democracy, I think that you have to be someone who's participating in journalism, even as a reader.
And of course, children aren't able to do that effectively if they don't learn to read at an early age. Also, that media literacy is critically important.
I feel like that the foundation has helped a lot of parents in my neighborhood, in my situation, because most parents can't afford books. So this will keep our kids interested in reading and keep their educations and minds inspired and growing.
I think more of these programs like what the Scripps Howard Foundation is doing should exist to support internships and fellowships and literacy.
And ultimately to make a better informed world.
Next, we have our major award categories, and we have that much anticipated Impact Award and the finalists there. But first, our Topic of the Year Award.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence for the topic of the year, the midterm election. The winner, Vice News, for She's Running.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie Hill, and I am running to take out Steve Knight, the last Republican in LA County and one of the top.
This piece was binge-worthy in terms of watching it. It was 4 episodes about an unknown millennial candidate, first-time candidate running for office in Santa Clarita, California.
This was a human story that told the tale of what it was like to be a first-time candidate as a young woman. The candidate pretty early on talks to the camera, I guess, or talks to the viewer about how surprised she was at the level of sexism that she has encountered.
This is a hard thing. When someone said to me, someone in the Democratic Party told me, you know, you're running a great campaign, your fundraising is really impressive, but I just don't think a woman can beat Steve Knight. I have honestly been really surprised by the sexism.
One of the most impressive things about this was that it was non-narrated, and so they got incredible access not only to the candidate, but to her entire team.
I want to get a Why I'm Running video.
I think we have that.
Are you confident that we have that?
I'm feeling increasingly managed and having a bit of a hard time with it. Everyone stopped trying to tell me what to do.
And theme. Vice got me as a member of the audience attached to the candidate. I was emotionally invested. I wanted to see what was going to happen to her. And that ability to suck me into that story was really powerful.
Hey guys, Steve Knight just called to concede.
We welcome Vice President and Bureau Chief for the Scripps Washington Bureau and Scripps Howard Foundation trustee, Ellen Weiss. Ellen presents the Topic of the Year Award to Kristen Fraser, producer of Vice News Tonight on HBO.
Thank you so much to the Scripps Howard Foundation for recognizing the entire scope, digital and television, of Vice News' She's Running project. We all knew 2018 was going to be a historic election, full of female firsts, and we wanted to have a record of how that happened and what the pressure on women in the public eye are as more and more of us force our way into all levels of government in this country. But the focus on women was more than just in front of the camera. Women behind the scenes guided this multimedia project. which is why we're pleased to donate our prize money to the nonprofit group Running Start. The group trains young women, both Democrats and Republicans, to run for office. We owe thanks to all of the candidates who let us into their lives and their campaigns, but I especially want to thank Representative Katie Hill and her team for being brave enough to let us show the real story of what it's like behind the scenes of a congressional campaign, even when all her consultants said it was a bad idea, over and over and over again. The willingness to be somewhat transparent about the process contributes to helping people understand and trust their government representatives more. And we need that now more than ever.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence in innovation. The Roy W. Howard Award. The winner, Anatomy of a Killing, by Daniel Adamson, Ayume Leroy, Benjamin Strick, and Tom Flannery of the BBC.
It was a brilliant and devastating story of the murder of 2 women and 2 young children by soldiers. And it grew out of a viral video, as so many stories do. And what the BBC decided to do was to go back and try to deconstruct this viral video.
Over the next few minutes, we're going to follow these women and children on the short walk to the end of their lives, and to glean from this video the clues that tell us where this happened, when it happened, and who is responsible for this atrocity.
They actually determined when the video was made using these digital tools, the location of it, because the government in Cameroon had tried to say that this took place in Mali, and they were able to prove that it was done in the Cameroon. They were able, through the visual forensics, to identify the weapons, 3 of the people involved in the murder.
It won because it gobsmacked us. It surprised us. We were literally watching this going, I had no idea how they did this or that this could be done. And they did this using open source platforms, and they literally solved a murder.
As a result of the BBC investigation, 7 Cameroonian soldiers were arrested, put in prison, and are under investigation.
I think this shows an example of the ways that technology and innovation now can be used to drive journalism, not just how stories are presented.
Here's a powerful piece of journalism that used these innovative techniques to tell a story in a way that couldn't have been told. They essentially solved the murders using technology.
Joining us is Scripps Howard Foundation trustee, granddaughter of Bob Scripps and great-great-granddaughter of E.W. Scripps, Samantha Breckner Anderson. Samantha presents the Roy W. Howard Award for Innovation and that check for $10,000 to Benjamin Strick, investigative reporter for the BBC.
Thank you so much. I'm really honoured to be here on behalf of the BBC Africa Eye team, who couldn't make it. Unfortunately, they're in London in bed at the moment. So we are a new investigative unit with the BBC. We're also a very small team, but I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the freelancers who are based in Africa, who are often reporting from quite dangerous and difficult circumstances like this story here. It is inevitably difficult for me to accept this award sometimes, specifically because of the nature of the film. 2 innocent women and their children were murdered very coldly. It's a shocking thing to look at, and it's a shocking thing to think about, but we only hope that the work that we have done at the BBC goes somewhere towards holding those responsible to account. In open source investigative techniques, we work in a collaborative nature. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the analysts who work from home on Twitter, Amnesty International, and the Bellingcat organisation and the team from there. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank my editors, at Africa Eye for having the trust in people like myself and the flexibility to accept new methods like this and work on more projects like Anatomy of a Killing. Thank you so much. Cheers.
The Scripps Howard Foundation honors excellence for investigative reporting. The Ursula and Gilbert Farfel Prize. The winner, Myanmar Burning by Wa Lone, Jo So-u, and Reuters. Reuters exposed atrocities in Myanmar with a startling series of pieces.
It looked at essentially the systematic expulsion of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar at the hands of the Myanmar government and military.
Thousands of Rohingya Muslims died, their villages burned. 700,000 people fled to refugee camps in Bangladesh.
The reporters behind the work created the most comprehensive and precise collection of direct evidence that put the responsibility at the hands of the Myanmar police and government. It was really an extraordinarily difficult to obtain series of reporting.
Myanmarese reporters Wa Lone and Jo So-u have been imprisoned because of a piece called Massacre in Myanmar, which uncovered the execution of 10 Rohingya Muslims.
We were really struck by how we could actually learn about 10 men who were killed, summarily executed, and we could know their name, we could know what they did, and who misses them. And that was an extremely powerful way to understand the cost of a genocide happening halfway around the world.
I think what made Myanmar Burning so special was the reality that it's a kind of story that changes the direction of an emerging country, and none of it was possible without great sacrifice on the part of a couple journalists.
This was incredibly difficult, really impressive work. The resources and the difficulty of getting to this story, the sort of thoroughness and respect for the victims. They got soldiers to admit to some of the crimes. They got locals to admit to some of what they had done. 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, we will remember what Myanmar has done to the Rohingya. We will remember it through this story.
Dr. Duane Nellis, president of Ohio University, presents the Ursula and Gilbert Farfel Prize and a check for $20,000 to Sarah Slobin, a visual editor at Reuters.
Thank you. It's really an honor to be here to accept this award. I'm honored to collect the award on behalf of Wa Lone and Jo So-u, and I just wanted to say that they're overjoyed with this recognition. As many of you know, Wa Lone and Jo So-u have been in detention in Myanmar for more than a year. At the time of their arrest on December 12, 2017, they'd been working on the investigation into the killing of 10 Rohingya men and boys in a village in the western Myanmar's Rakhine State. In what has become a landmark press freedom case, the court in Yangon charged Wa Lone and Jo So-u under the colonial-era Official Secrets Act, and in September sentenced them to 7 years in prison. Reuters has been covering the crisis in Rakhine State since it began. We will continue to offer independent and reliable reports of the crisis as it continues. Wa Lone and Jo So-u are journalists who perform a crucial role in shedding light on global issues. They are good men and good colleagues who are simply doing their jobs. Independent, unbiased reporting. I'm indebted and grateful for the chance to have played a small part in the story. I tried every day to remember when I was going home to my family that they were not. We're grateful for the expressions of Wa Lone and Jo So-u, both internationally and from within Myanmar, and we're grateful to the Scripps Howard Foundation for this award. Thank you.
And now for the presentation we've all been waiting for, the Impact Award. Please welcome Liz Carter and Adam Simpson.
This is the award that recognizes journalism that led to significant changes in the public, private, or business sector.
It honors what the judges deemed the piece of journalism that had the greatest impact of 2018. And this year, 3 finalists were chosen among the 15 award winners.
So the first finalist is Implant Files by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, the NBC Investigative Unit, the Associated Press, and more than 50 media partners. Judges called the investigation into faulty medical devices excellently planned, researched, documented, and reported. They added that the work had compelling personal stories of patients, giving life to the numbers.
The second finalist is Myanmar Burning by Walloon, Jo So-u, and Reuters. Judges said the piece on the expulsion of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar were a brave and intrepid collection of reporting. The reporters gathered comprehensive evidence to tell the stories of atrocities that might not otherwise have been brought to light.
And the third finalist is The Devastation of TVA's Coal Ash Spill by Jamie Satterfield of the Knoxville News-Sentinel. Judges said reporter Jamie Satterfield delivers excellent watchdog reporting that holds the powerful accountable. Satterfield's extraordinary efforts resulted in change-inducing and life-saving journalism. And the winner is here in the envelope. Right.
Open it.
Oh, let's do it. What are we waiting for? And the winner of this year's Impact Award is the Implant Files. Congratulations.
Well, I only wrote one speech. So I just want to say, I mean, looking at the amazing and having read and watched some of the amazing journalism we've seen here tonight, being honored with this is just unbelievable. So thank you so much for this high honor. I also want to say that, you know, ICIJ is a very small nonprofit, and that the money we are so gratefully earning for this is going to go right back into our journalism. So thank you again.
What an incredible celebration of journalism here tonight. I'm sure many of you did as I. You shed a tear. You had an aha moment. You said to yourself, there's more for me to do. It has been my pleasure to be here with you, to serve as your host for this evening, and to witness the power of journalism and its ability to impact our communities. There were so many talented people who were honored for their work and their commitment to this craft. It is a craft, it is a profession. And somewhere right now, a journalist is putting herself in danger to report on an international crisis, or here at home, a team of journalists is poring over data extracted from records requests seeking to expose wrongdoings in our community. Most of these people work without receiving any recognition, any prizes, any money, or maybe a little money. But still, they deserve so much of our praise. They are vital to our society. To them, we say thank you. On behalf of the Scripps Howard Foundation, we thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful night.
We want to take a moment to honor someone significant to the production of the Scripps Howard Awards, Kristen Walters, who passed away this month. This show features more than 900 graphic elements, and Kristen, a creative projects manager at the E.W. Scripps Company Graphics Hub, motivated her team of 21 to tackle the challenge. The show is made possible by many dedicated people, none more than Kristen. Her team in Tampa, along with the Scripps Howard Foundation, would like to thank Kristen for her compassionate leadership, her endless positivity, and for nurturing the values that the E.W. Scripps Company holds dear. In addition to her many contributions, her warm smile and infectious laugh will be missed.
Ernie Pyle might be the last beloved journalist that I can think of, that there wasn't anybody that didn't like Ernie Pyle. One thing he did, I think, that fueled his wanderlust was that he was the manager for the baseball team, and they traveled to Japan for a tour, and so he got to go to Japan. And I think that really sparked his idea of this not only being a big country to get to know, but it being a big world out there.
We started traveling. He and Jerry, his wife, went through the Southwest. They spent about 4.5, 5 years traveling South America, Alaska. He honed his skills, talking to people, hearing their stories, and reporting in a way that nobody else had ever done before.
He's writing about one guy on a hill, and that's kind of shaped what I wanted to do as a journalist. I never really wanted to cover famous people or politicians or, people who were in the news a lot. I like the idea of writing about ordinary people who live most of their lives in the shadows, and I feel like that's exactly what Ernie did, was give these ordinary soldiers a voice.
There's a legacy that he's left for the men and women who continue to fight today in wars around the world. One of the things that he advocated for in his columns in 1944 was that soldiers who go into battle should get what he called fight pay. And before 1944 closed out, Congress had approved that, and even today, when soldiers go into battle, they receive combat pay. That's part of Ernie Pyle's legacy of journalism that has a lasting impact. I think he would be so happy with that difference that he makes even today. Human interest reporting uncovers truths in the human spirit. So the great human interest reporting, it moves us, it enlightens us, it builds bridges between us. It helps us see the world through another person's eyes.